All right, what's up, everybody? It's your boy Andrew coming back at you with another episode of the Jaguar podcast. Today we have a special guest, former Jacksonville Jaguars offensive lineman Uche Nwaneri. He was drafted by the Jaguars in 2007 out of Purdue in the 5th round. Uche Nwaneri played for the Jags from 2007 to 2013, and he also has an amazing YouTube channel called The Observant Lineman. Check it out. I'm going to put a link in the chat. Subscribe, give him some support, give him some likes on his videos. He's got great content, sports content, gaming content. Give it up for the great Uche Nwaneri. What's up, man? How's it going?
What's up, man? How you doing, man? I appreciate you having me on. This is definitely it's definitely going to be a good time to talk a little bit about the Jaguars. So appreciate you having me on the Jaguar podcast.
Thanks, man. Anytime. Thanks for taking the time to come on the show, man. I know you're super busy, but this YouTube channel you have, the Observant Lineman, it's awesome, man. I love it. You got great content on there. You give your perspective on a variety of different topics. I mean, ranging from NBA to NFL to gaming. And I was just kind of curious, you being a former player, how you kind of what made you start this YouTube channel?
Boredom, to be honest. I've been involved in a number of different things since I retired, but at the end of the day, it really, I think one of the things that as athletes we kind of like miss out on is we kind of lose that there's some of that that connection you have with the fan base where you talk about sports that just kind of dissipates after you retire, because you're obviously for the most part, you're not in the area anymore. Like I wasn't living in Jacksonville after I retired. So, there was always that element when I would go out in Jacksonville where I'd run into people and we'd talk football, whether I'm standing in line at the grocery store, or I'm, out at a bar having a drink. There'd be people who I know and people who I don't know who come up and, they obviously recognize me, and you talk about sports. And as much as some people think that they're kind of, that they're intruding on you, or they're bothering you, but a lot of times, not every time, but a lot of times, it's really just, it's easier. That's like the easiest thing for us to do is talk about football. Like that's because that's second nature to us. So I can talk about that forever. It doesn't bother me to talk about it. So that was one thing that really was missing for me as a retired athlete, is that I rarely had conversations about football. And I felt like maybe making a connection again with fans would be a good way, and somewhat it's therapeutic to a certain extent for myself, just to be able to sit and kind of give my perspective on, how I see things in the sports world now, especially with football. And, just try to apply my perspective to those things and hope that people enjoy it.
Yeah, I really enjoy it, man. It just seems to come natural to you. You did some great videos. One on it was the Kwame Brown, Stephen A. Smith / Charlemagne feud. That was great. Just I liked it personally because I live in the Virginia area, so the Wizards are our basketball team, and so I remember a lot of that. But I also liked the Urban Meyer analysis you did recently on your YouTube channel. And I want to jump into that a little bit because, there's a lot of things going on right now for the Jaguars, especially relating to Urban Meyer. I don't want to beat it to death, but, there was the James Robinson fiasco where he was getting benched. And then there was the Marvin Jones Jr. altercation with Urban Meyer. I mean, bottom line, where do you see this going?
If history teaches us anything, then I would see that this is going to end with Urban Meyer being released at the end of the season, because you're now taking this team into waters that we've actually been in before. When Mike Mularkey was given the head coaching job, there's a lot of similarities between there are crucial similarities between Mike Mularkey's tenure in Jacksonville and Urban Meyer's tenure in Jacksonville. And the thing, and, I spoke with, I talk with Gene Fournette, pretty regularly about the Jaguars. And the thing that I told him was, when Mike Mularkey came to Jacksonville, it was his first time being a head coach. It was his first time bringing in his own staff. And, a lot of the staff that he had were either castaway NFL coaches, or they weren't guys with a great amount of experience at the position that they were coaching. One of those positions, which was crucial, was the quarterback coach. With Blaine Gabbert as our quarterback, and in a crucial period where he needed to show growth, where there needed to be positive forward movement for him. He had an offensive quarterback coach who is in his first year as a quarterback coach. And so in the locker room,
yeah,
we're just like, how's this going to work? Then on top of that, you look at how the season played out. We went 2-14. There were a lot of philosophical things that Mike Mularkey did that were not conducive to creating a productive football team, to creating a team that can improve week in and week out. We had our number of OTAs, I believe, canceled, if I remember correctly, because of some of the things that we were doing during OTAs. They weren't allowed. Like, these were things that are meant to protect the players from injury, protect the players from being, obviously put in a situation where it could be a guy who's trying to get a contract that year, and now he's, because of doing more than he should be doing, he has a torn ACL or, a torn rotator cuff, things like that. And then just overall, just when you look at it from a philosophical standpoint, the way that Mike Mularkey approached, getting us ready for the season and then going through the season, it just didn't work. It just didn't work. And a lot of us didn't see it working from the beginning, but you buy into these things because you want to be a team player. And that costs a lot of guys. Like, that costs a lot of guys in terms of, the morale of the team. Some guys were looking to, get new contracts, and that season was such a wash that that opportunity goes down the drain for some. And for a player like me, I was injured. I played the entire season injured, and they wouldn't let me tell anybody that I was injured. So a lot of the media in Jacksonville was like, what's wrong with Uche? Something's wrong with him. Like, what's going on? I mean, well, I had like a torn up knee that I'm playing on the whole season. So it just the culture wasn't a great culture that season. And there were promises made by people like Gene Smith about how close that team was to being in the playoffs, to Shad Khan when he bought the team. And those things didn't play out anywhere close to what he was told it would be. So he made the decision with a 2-14 team that you can't build on this, because you haven't actually started, you haven't actually built the foundation yet. There's no culture in place, so we can't move forward. If there's a time to get out, that time is now. And I feel like that's kind of where the Jaguars are now. You haven't built any culture yet. Not any. You don't have a foundation at all. You have, does anybody believe that there's not drama going on between the players and the coaches right now on that team? Does anybody believe Urban Meyer when he says that? No. Why? Because he's lied to us like on everything.
Yeah.
And it's not even like he's lying to us and we're figuring it out a month later. He's lying, and they're actually like, yeah, like within 5 minutes, they've already proven that he's lied. They're asking him about a player's playing time. Let me see if I remember this. Let me pull it up.
Was it Andre Cisco? Yeah, it was like Andre Cisco.
Andre Cisco, yes. They asked about his playing time, and Urban Meyer is sitting there saying, "Oh yeah, I believe he got to play a bit more on Sunday, and this and that." And the guy didn't play at all. He had 0 snaps. What are you talking about? You don't even know who's playing in your game, in the games you're coaching.
Yeah, that was funny because somebody proposed, putting a player, one of the reporters asking about a player that didn't even play anymore, like Fred Taylor or something.
Yeah.
And just to see what he would say, that would be crazy if he was like, "Oh yeah, Fred got a lot of carries today."
Game today.
It's crazy, man. It's crazy, man. You must have been walking down memory lane with some of the stuff that's going on right now. I mean, it's pretty crazy. But I was against the hire when they announced it. And I think the tipping point for me, there were a lot of things, but the tipping point for me was the James Robinson situation where he gets benched, and then Meyer kind of made up a story about it, about injuries, and then we kind of found out that wasn't the straight story. And I mean, that must have, when I think about it, that's like unheard of. I mean, that would be like Coughlin way back when benching Fred Taylor, or Jack Del Rio benching Maurice Jones-Drew. You just don't bench your best running back, especially coming off of a 1,000-yard rushing season. I mean, it's just crazy.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely correct. I made a statement on my live stream last week that the Jaguars literally got a diamond in the rough.
Yeah,
you got a player who you didn't have to draft, a player who you don't have to pay, and he's a rookie with 1,000 yards rushing on the team that went 1-15. That's something that's pretty much unheard of.
Yeah.
Because what team, what franchise in the NFL that goes 1-15 have you ever heard of that has 1,000-yard rusher consistently, that has a guy who has that kind of ability as a rookie on top of that, undrafted free agent? I mean, this is somebody who you now have identified as a core member of the team. He's a core member. He's needed. He's absolutely necessary to give you a good chance, your best chance at winning. And first off, you disrespect him by drafting a running back in the first round who's not even clearly a first-round talent in many people's eyes. And to add insult to injury, he now has a Liz Frank injury, which puts him out for the entire season and undoubtedly shortens his career by maybe 2 or 3 seasons.
Yeah.
Liz Frank injury is what happened to Maurice Jones-Drew late in his career. Yep. And he only played 2 more seasons after that. So you already have a handicapped first round pick who is almost assuredly not going to pan out in the way that you imagined because of that injury. Now, you take that and you throw that out. That's one mark against Urban Meyer. Secondly, you have James Robinson. Every time I can't forget. I watched on some of the games I would watch. You have him in the game, and you're moving down the field just like that, handing him the rock. He's just picking up great yardage each carry. He's averaging about 5 or 6 yards. If I remember correctly, one game. What game was it? What game was it? I think they were playing against. It's earlier in the season. I can't remember exactly what team it was. It was the game before Arizona.
I'm trying to remember. I think that may have been it was a
home game.
Was that Houston maybe? No, we have Houston next week. So
I think that might have been an NFC South team they played against. Let me pull up their schedule. Well, either way.
Yeah.
This is where they took James Robinson out at the goal line. And they ran the fourth and goal run that lost like 5 yards.
Yeah, they put Carlos Hyde in there, right?
Put Carlos Hyde in, yes.
Yeah.
So you have a running back who is one of the best in the NFL, top 5, I believe, in the NFL at scoring inside the red zone on rundowns, and you take him out of the game and put Carlos Hyde in on 4th down.
It's ridiculous. Yeah, totally ridiculous.
In that game, James Robinson averaged I think he was averaging close to 8 yards a carry that game.
Beanie Baby just in the chat just said it was the Broncos.
That's the Broncos game. Boom. That's who it was. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Seems like so long ago, but yeah, man, it's crazy. That I worry about with that pick, the ETN pick, and just with everything going on right now that we're going to drive, James Robinson out of here. And I mean, like, if anything,
that's almost assuredly past tense at this point. If he is smart, and I'm saying this because to me, it's about, as a player, he needs to be very aware of the danger that his career could be in because of how they're treating him. Other teams right now are seeing that he has value and they're not respecting it. So if he was smart, he would ask to be traded or be released, ask to be released at the end of this season, because you've already been shown that you're being that there's a bias from the top against you, the head coach. There's no reason for you to stay here. You should leave. He should be as adamant as he can, almost in the same regard as Jalen Ramsey, to get out of Jacksonville, or his career is not going to end well. It's not going to end well because they're going to keep him there and they're going to drain him of any value. And for a running back, you've got a very small window of time where your value is at its highest.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. I feel like, Shad's on the clock here. He's got to make a decision. I don't know if he's going to do anything. I mean, there's a lot of people are saying he may not do anything and give Urban another season. To me, it's just, this is an ego issue, right? I mean, Shad came out and he said that, I got this one right with the Urban Meyer hire, but now obviously it's looking like that wasn't the right decision. And I mean, what do you think? Do you think this is an ego issue with Shad?
Man, I don't know. I wouldn't presume it to be off, just off the top of my head, having known, having been around Shotgun. But it would be a hard pill for him to swallow, to turn around and admit that this was a mistake. And there's a lot riding on what he does at the end of the season. There is, I mean, I would venture to say that the actual pillars that hold up the Jaguars as a franchise itself are going to be dependent on what he does at the end of this season, because we can't unless these guys win the next 80% of the remaining games. This team took no steps forward at all in 2021. Yeah, those 2 wins you could argue are purely anomalies. That if you played those same teams 9 more times, that the Jags would lose all of them.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Buffalo game was a fluke. Really, I just didn't think it. I just think the Bills didn't show up, and the Dolphins. I don't know. That one's a little bit more up in the air with me. But yeah, I agree. Definitely agree.
I mean, you have to think of it like this, and this is how I think of it. Because I mean, obviously, having gone through something sort of like that, what's happening right now. And, playing my whole career in Jacksonville, I played 7 years there. I understand the dynamics that the dynamics between the fans and the team and the NFL and its bigger picture and how it wants to expand. And, the Jags have been a constant name that comes up when you talk about getting them out of Jacksonville and moving them somewhere else to try and expand the NFL. London has been the latest in regards to that. And, I think that you have to consider that at the end of this season, there are going to be some interest in the NFL that are paying attention to what happens here. Jerry Jones owns half of the Las Vegas Raiders. Jerry Jones owns a part of that team. I'm sure Jerry Jones is looking to expand where his ownership has influence in the NFL. That could be an option for Jerry Jones when you look at how a team is being mismanaged. And, worst case scenario, if Shad Khan is in any way even considering whether he wants to get out of this whole NFL business, there is an option there. There's a window that can be open to say, hey, I'll take half of the team from you and let me move them to London. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. There are scenarios where the NFL may in a very shady and backroom kind of way try to step in, because you can't have a team look this bad week in and week out in the NFL, and not even from the necessarily on the field standpoint, just as a franchise. Like, is it amateur hour or what? Like, that's what I think some other NFL teams look at a team like Jacksonville. I mean, look at a team like Jacksonville, and that may come to thought. But I mean, hell, even the Detroit Lions at 1-10-1 or 1-11-1, they don't have as much dysfunction as these Jacksonville Jaguars have. I think that's clear.
Yeah, it's a total clown show. I mean, there were wide receivers. I believe it was like Laquan Treadwell and LaVisca. They had video up on Twitter of them running into each other. I mean, they just don't look organized.
Yeah. I mean, you got 2 guys running into each other on a route, which is not in and of itself a extremely, like, it's not something that we haven't seen before, but in context, They looked like they had no idea what the fuck was going on. And the Titans players were like, what the fuck are y'all doing? And they're almost, it's comical. It's a parody of football at this point when you look at that. That's how I look at it. So I'm like, how long can Shad Khan allow himself to not actually be, to not actually be serious about the reality of the situation he's in? You made a bad decision. You have to now as the owner of the team, are you going to allow, can you imagine this getting much better? Even in the best case scenario, can you imagine this team, him making this team a playoff team? And when there has to be some level of accountability that he has to take to begin with for you to even cross that line and say, okay, well, at least he's admitted that he's fucking all this up. Next year might be better. He's not even admitting that. So where exactly does this go?
Yeah,
how bad can this get?
It's a great question. The thing that's interesting to me is the stadium. I mean, I went down there in September to watch the Kansas City Jags game in 2019. And I mean, it was hot, man. I was on fire. People were like passing out. I don't feel like he's made any enhancements to the stadium. And to me that, at least putting a canopy up, or protecting some of the,
you got hot tubs, right? Ain't you got like pools in those mugs now?
Yeah. So it's like,
that's gotta be like, just like, who's getting in the pool?
Yeah. So it's like, if he's not going to make any enhancements to the stadium, it kind of makes me question, the commitment there. But,
yeah, put some shade over the damn stadium so people don't die. I mean, it is Jacksonville. You are next to a river.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like there's humidity, there's heat, all those things, you kind of, they're not practicing in it like we do.
Yeah. I wanted to talk a little about, some of the coaches, during your time in Jacksonville. You had, you played from 2007 to 2013. So that was the Jack Del Rio era, Mike Mularkey and, Gus Bradley. I had Paul Spicer on the show, and he kind of gave some insight into Jack Del Rio and his coaching style. But I was kind of interested, what your take was or your opinion was on each of the coaches' styles when you were there in Jacks.
I've said this, and I believe it still. I believe the best coach Jags have had since, since I was there up till now. I feel like Jack Del Rio is at the top of that that group of head coaches, just simply because of how he actually interacted with the players. There's something to be said about a guy who you can relate to, because you've been there, you've been in the same kind of situations before. And Jack Del Rio was a coach who played 11 years in the NFL. So he understood part of what it takes as a player to be successful in the league. And he understood, that there is a certain way that you approach dealing with men in a sport like this, because there's a lot of it's a highly competitive field. There's a lot of egos involved in it. And at the end of the day, the person has to feel like, you want your guys to feel like they can go to bat for you, that they want to go to bat for you, even when things aren't at the best. And I think that one thing that, for the most part of his time in Jacksonville, Jack Del Rio had guys who would go to bat for him when the media would talk about what was going on, whether we were going through a losing streak, whether we dropped the last 3 in a row to miss the playoffs. Players went to bat for Jack because Jack understood us, and he treated us with that respect, and he gave us the space to operate as ourselves, as individuals within the framework of the team. Mike Mularkey, I don't believe that Mike Mularkey understood that at all. And he was also a guy who played in the league. But again, I think that from a personality standpoint, his personality didn't really lend to allowing the players to define, or the players' personalities to define the team as well as, the coach's philosophy. He didn't necessarily allow for that. I think his philosophy was more molded in that old Steelers, Pittsburgh Steeler, kind of just keep beating your head against the wall until either the wall crumbles or you do. Well, how about I just build a door into this wall so I can go through the door instead? Because I don't have to knock it down, but I can still get through it.
Exactly.
And then Gus Bradley, I think Gus Bradley was a great man, great guy, but his inexperience was something that he didn't really have an answer for, and he wasn't able to really. I feel like it was more of an experiment than it was him honestly like knowing the way for the team. He was learning things as we were going, but he was also, he also brought along a lot of his principles as a individual, which were great principles that we did get behind. And he had a great positive outlook on things, almost to a fault. Cause there are times when it's like, bruh, shit's bad right now, bro. We need to do something. You need to yell at somebody, something. Throw something, do something. Come on, because this ain't it. But you understood why he resisted that a lot, because what is that going to do for anybody? Sometimes that is something that just creates a spark, and guys all of a sudden now guys have a little fire that's burning in them, and they're going to add that much more to their preparation. But I think that to a certain extent that continuous positive outlook started to fall on deaf ears, because it wasn't because of him per se, but a lot of his staff were first year guys, and they didn't really, come on, Jed Fish. That guy was terrible. He was a terrible coordinator. He's a terrible game planner, terrible coordinator, but that wasn't necessarily Gus's fault. This was a guy who just didn't work. What he was trying to do didn't work. And he's coming, again, from the collegiate level, trying to bring a system from that side and implement it on this side. And these are not compatible to a certain extent. So it was almost destined to fail. But, I feel like Jack Del Rio was the sweet spot for everything that the Jags have tried to accomplish post, the early Tom Coughlin era. I think that's kind of where you want to be. You want somebody there who's been in the trenches before, who understands the game, who understands the modern game of football. And I don't think that Urban Meyer is a fit for that.
Yeah, I agree. I want to jump to the comments real quick. Patrick Jackson here. We certainly look at it and think amateur hour. I've never seen a worse offense on the field for Jacksonville than what we saw on Sunday night. Agreed. And then we go to another comment. Tree would love that Steelers analogy. Nice. Okay. So, all right. Next, I wanted to jump into the offensive line for Jacksonville has been, pretty inconsistent. And I was looking at and doing some research on you, and I saw that in 2009, when you were starting that year, I don't think you were penalized at all during that season. That's pretty amazing. But a very, very different situation with Jacksonville. Last year in 2020, compiling, I think, 1,000+ yards and penalties. I think they were close to either number 1 or number 2 in the league last year. And then this year, it looks like the same thing is going on with the offensive line. Tons of holding calls, offsides, false starts, etc. So, I just wanted to kind of pick your brain on that. Is that just strictly coaching, or is that a combination of things? Them not hearing maybe the snap count. I was just kind of curious what your thoughts were.
Honestly, I always felt like, and just because this is because how I was taught, I think that to have the discipline to not be someone who jumps off sides and gets a lot of penalties for offsides or gets holding calls, you have to one, you have to be dialed in mentally, but two, I think that falls specifically on the technique you're being taught. How you're being coached by your position coach. That can be directly attributed to whether or not you're somebody who gets penalized a lot. especially when you're talking about holding. If you're getting called for holding a lot, it means you're not being coached on how to block well. That's what I think. Yeah. I mean, I can name you the one game where I had the most holding calls in my career in one game, because I never got called for holding, because I never was really holding. I mean, I got guys on the inside of their pads and I controlled them with under their armpits. So there was no way I could be called for holding. But, you know, I mean, I'll never forget this game. It was the game where he scored 4 touchdowns against Tampa Bay. And it was actually, outside of these 3 plays, I was having like an amazing game. But I held the dude like 2 plays in a row. I held the cat. And then we got like, I think we got close to the goal line after that, because it was like 2 plays in a row. I got called for holding. And I was blocking him well, but he did something unexpected. So my hands like kind of drifted and got the outside of him instead of getting where I normally felt like I could get. And I held it. And then I had 3 holding calls in 4 plays. And I was just like, all right, fuck this game. This game's ruined. This game's ruined. My worst game ever. And, you know, I think that I might have had a holding call in like 1 or 2 other instances in like my career. But I feel like that penalty particularly means you're not being taught how to block well. And, you know, that's where that starts at.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think it's coaching and technique. And I mean, when Urban Meyer, I don't know if you saw this video on Twitter, but Urban Meyer was asked by, I think it was AP reporter Mark Long. He said essentially, you know, the offensive line, he said he's trusted in them and he didn't make any changes, but they're out there essentially getting their ass kicked, and they're getting paid a lot of money and they're not performing up to par. And Urban just looked at him. He was like, yeah. I was like, wow. I mean, just some of the answers, man, are just unbelievable.
Well, that right there, that answer in and of itself is something that attributes to why you lose the locker room.
Yeah. Exactly.
It doesn't matter if your guys are getting their ass kicked. Like, you need to, you know, you can tell that question is being, you know, you're being shot that question as an opportunity to pile on or to point the finger at the offensive line. And it might be true, but you don't answer it with a, yeah. You know, that's not how a coach who wants his players to go to bat for him treats a situation like that. You go to bat for your players. So what do you say when they say that? I say, hey, you know, we're struggling right now as an offensive line, but I know those guys are putting in hard work. I see it every week. I see that they want to be better. So we're going to look at the film, and we're going to try again to break down where we're making mistakes that are causing us to get put in situations where we're holding, put in situations where the quarterback's getting hit as he releases, put in situations where we can't get the ball up the field when we're trying to establish the run game. Like, these are things that are true, that you have to do in order to find an answer to any of these questions. But to just be like, yeah, okay, well, fuck you. Next time they ask me if this such and such happened in this report, I'm going to say yes. I'm not going to lie to them.
Yeah.
Since we're over here, you know, throwing people under buses.
Well, you mentioned it, you know, in your urban analysis video. It was a great point about the wooden leadership pyramid. And I really like that point you made, because I think it was dead on. I mean, you went through exactly the different, you know, pillars of leadership and how Urban Meyer was like essentially not meeting any of those. I mean, and I think it's exactly true, man. It's
where's your loyalty? Where's the loyalty? Where is, you know, the honesty? You know what I mean? Where is the skill? He doesn't really answer football. He doesn't really divulge true football knowledge when he's interviewed. He divulges cliches, like things that everybody kind of knows, but he never really talks about the nuances that actually build that entire cliche out for the world to see. You know?
Yeah, and I would say even, you know, even simpler, I think, is like the old adage, right? You know, lead by example. And you can't even do that. I mean, with the whole viral video thing, I mean, how do you go in the locker room and say, you know, you preach all these leadership principles, but you're not even following
you can't display any of them.
Yeah.
You're not even taking your own advice.
Then he throws Trevor under the bus, like in that. Anyways.
Oh, remember when you went to Vegas and I said, hey, be careful out there? Like, yeah. Okay, duh. Like, what does that mean?
It's like, get out of here with that bull crap, man. Like, it's just it's interesting. But hey, I want to segue into some gaming here.
Oh.
The Halo TV series that's out
Ah.
right now. I'm excited about it. It's on. I think it's available on Paramount Plus. My
Well, they,
guy.
they dropped the teaser for it. It hasn't started yet.
Okay. Yeah,
They dropped the
I
teaser.
stand corrected. So my guy Pablo Schreiber, he was in. He played Nikki Sabaka in The Wire. I love that
Mhm.
show, and he's in it. I think he's playing the Master Chief.
Really?
Yeah. So I'm excited about it, man. What are your thoughts on it? It looks pretty good.
Man, I am a Halo head. I have been a Halo guy since the very first Halo. That was my first, when I got an Xbox for Christmas when I was in 2001. So that was my last couple years in high school. And that was the only game I had on Xbox for like the first year was Halo. And that's the game that I played religiously. And then got to college, got to Purdue, and we all had Xbox with Halo. So we would have LAN parties in the freshman dorm,
Yeah.
all night long. That's part of why half of us were on academic probation after our first semester at Purdue, because we didn't go to classes because we were playing Halo. But I love Halo, man, and it's great to see it come back. It's been like 6 years since the last official franchise title came out, and now you got Halo Infinite and the Halo TV show, and it looks like they're trying to keep things true to the lore, which is always a good thing to see, especially with Master Chief, because obviously he is Halo. That is the franchise behind him.
Yeah.
But oh man, I'm excited. I'm excited for it. I think it's going to be great. It's one of those shows that I've always wished, or one of those franchises I've always wished would get a TV show. My other one right now is Dread, which is kind of the same, kind of a similar makeup. Just a distant future that's a little bit dystopian, but there's battles being fought for the city on one end, and there's battles being fought for the galaxy on the other. But definitely looking forward to Halo.
Yeah, me too, man. I played a lot of it in high school. When we'd go to summer, football camp, and we'd be in the dorms, playing Halo, and it was great. It just brings back a lot of memory, and the production value looks great, man. It looks like they're
A lot
pulling
of screaming.
Yeah, yeah. So I think it's going to be great. I'm going to go to the comments here real quickly, and then we'll wrap up. Here's Nick Foster. I mean, do we really think Shad is actually going to fire him? No, I don't think so. I agree with it. I think it'll probably it'll probably drag on for a little bit, and then he'll eventually pull the plug. But I hope that's
which
not
is a shame, because that's going to be. I feel like that's going to hurt Trevor Lawrence. That's the one who's going to be. That's the one main piece to the one main cog to this machine that is going to be irreparably damaged if you allow for what seems to be a pretty disastrous tenure to continue. But I will tell you that there's actually a quote unquote non-formal press conference going on with Shad Khan, I think as we speak, on his yacht.
Okay.
But you may or may not hear about that in the next day or so on the news broadcast about the Jaguars. But that is what I've been told is happening right now.
So you're hearing that from friends and insiders at the Jags organization. Okay. Well, we'll be on the lookout for that. I have kind of a tough question I'm going to ask you here, but if you're the GM, Uche, you put your GM hat on. How do you fix the Jaguars? You're like, how much time do we have?
Yeah. Well, first step is I would get rid of Urban Meyer. I would get rid of coaching staff. I would reload coaching staff, reload the head coaching position. That's where you start. And then from there, I would set up for, our first draft. And I'd be looking to prioritize my offensive line and my wide receiver positions on the offense. And then on defense, I'd be looking to prioritize my defensive end and my cornerback position. And from there, you're looking and I think before the draft, you're going to be looking at free agency. So even before the draft, I'd be prioritizing those positions in free agency. I'd try and go and find a left tackle, of the free agents that are going to be available. I'm going to have to offer 120% on what that player is worth to get them to come to Jacksonville. So I'm going to have to spend a lot of money to get players to come into Jacksonville. And one of the main ways that I'm going to be able to promise them, or that I'm going to be able to persuade them to come to Jacksonville, is by promising that there's a new coaching staff, there's a new head coach, and we're going a completely different direction than we did with Urban Meyer. Because I can assure you that's going to be the biggest holdover. That's going to be the biggest concern for any potential free agent is I'm going to have to deal with Urban Meyer or not. Because if they are, then they're not coming. But obviously, like I said, that'd be the first move. Get rid of Meyer and that coaching staff and bring in someone else. Maybe get an Eric Bieniemy. Maybe even look at a Doug Peterson potentially, and have him put together a staff. He has a recent Super Bowl win with the Philadelphia Eagles, so there might be something there with him. Hell, maybe potentially see if you can. I would doubt it, but see if you could pluck somebody from another franchise. If you could poach a Mike Tomlin potentially with like a $200 million contract or something but you would want to get a head coach who has a fairly solid reputation as a team builder. And from there, free agency would be a huge priority, then the draft, and then building a team that is going to be centered around the abilities of not only, Trevor Lawrence, but also the fundamentals of what you need to win in football. You have to have a good running game. You have to stop the run, and you have to be able to convert on third downs on offense. You have to be able to score in the red zone on offense. I'm going to be, looking at my offense from that perspective. I'm going to need a tight end who can make plays down the field. I'm going to need a receiver who can convert in the possession game. In the red zone, I'm gonna need an offensive line that can sustain blocks, that can protect in pass protection. These are all things that I'm gonna be looking for. Defense, you want to be able to get a pass rush without having to blitz. That's what allows for secondaries to thrive, is when they don't have to send extra people to get pressure. When you can get pressure with 4, then you have a better chance of being successful in secondary. If I have to bring 6 people, then my secondary's got to be on point. The entire player, they're going to get burned. So I mean these are just things that I would prioritize for my team. But again, you build that culture. You start with that culture, and you give these guys something that they can buy into, a goal and a vision that they can relate to and see on the same level that you see it on. And then they want to do those things for you. They want to improve their game enough to be a factor on Sunday.
Yeah, I totally agree. This is a great little comment here. Uche gave more coherent information about how to improve the team in one statement than Urban has in his entire time with the organization. Dead on. I agree with it. Do you see Byron Leftwich? Is there any chance at that, you think, with him coming over to Jacksonville?
Why would he come to Jacksonville?
Yeah, I mean, he's already with a great franchise, Tampa Bay, won a Super Bowl. I think
he probably has a lot to learn there. He's probably learning a lot there. He's going to be a head coach, but I mean, the timing right now wouldn't be good for me to go to Jacksonville if I was him. Yeah. I want to get as much time with Bruce Arians and Tom Brady as I can. And if that means here until they retire, then I'm going to be here until they retire. Then I'll try to, and then even at that, the Bucs, you think the Bucs aren't going to stay in the house when it's time to name a new head coach? If that's, if they continue on the path they're on now, and Bruce Arians decides, okay, this is enough for me, I'm going to retire, Byron Leftwich is next up. If he's still there, he's the head coach. That's a given. So, I think he could be a good head coach for the Jaguars in the future, but I think as the timing plays out now, this is such a bad situation for anybody to come into. I mean, it's really bad. If you bring somebody in then it needs to be somebody who has the ability to instantly change the culture and there's little question about whether there will be buy-in. That's something that's going to be hard for anybody who hasn't already been an NFL head coach.
Yeah, exactly. I think you're dead on there. Well, hey, Uche, I want to wrap up here. I just want to give you some time to, talk about any announcements that you have coming up with your YouTube channel or.
Yeah. We got a live stream today, 7 p.m. Eastern. Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, I do live streams on my channel. In between, I drop content, whether it's clips from the live stream or new videos, new content regarding, some breaking news in sports or in football. But yeah, definitely just type in my name. See how you see it spelled there on the screen, and that'll pop my channel up. And, go ahead, subscribe to me. If you want to become a member, become a member. But, go check me out. And definitely, I do appreciate you having me on here on the Drag Roar podcast, man. It's been a great time talking with you.
Yeah, no, thank you, Uche. You've been so generous, more than generous with your time. I really appreciate having you on the show. And everybody go subscribe to his channel. Great content. And I think we'll wrap it up from here. We have the great Uche Nwaneri. All right, guys. I'll see you later.
Thanks, man.